Hello and welcome back to Walk the Cinema podcast. In today's episode, we're going to be covering the 3 movies that Quentin Tarantino wrote but didn't direct. Yeah. So if you're a fan, you already know what they are.
Mm-hmm. It's True Romance,
yeah,
Natural Born Killers, and From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, we'll go through them in chronological order.
Yeah, and I think it was an interesting topic to discuss, especially since Quentin at least says that he's only making one more movie and then he is going to transition into more writing, which I think he still intends to write scripts as well as novels that he's been doing. But yeah, I think it'll be an interesting point in his career, and it'll be interesting to see movies that he just wrote the screenplay and didn't really have too much involvement in terms of vision.
These are earlier in his career. Except, I guess, From Dusk Till Dawn is after Quentin Tarantino was already famous as a director.
Yeah.
But True Romance was like his first big project.
Yeah. And it's directed by Tony Scott. And it starred Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, and then there was some,
a lot of known faces.
Yeah, so like Dennis Hopper.
I think this is the one with the biggest status in film community. Probably the biggest cult following. And it was also maybe my least favorite one.
I think I kind of agree. I mean, I had heard about True Romance for a while. It's been on my radar for a while. And I know a lot of people really, really enjoy it, but I think that there was something that was just kind of maybe lacking for it with me.
Honestly, it could be Tony Scott, because we've mentioned, I think the only movie of his we've mentioned before was Top Gun. And we mentioned how annoying the music was.
Yeah.
And the score for this is also annoying.
Yeah,
and
it really took me out.
And the score for Rolling Thunder or something like that? Another Tom Cruise.
Days of Thunder? Days of Thunder, yes.
That was also terrible.
Yeah, we hate that too.
So this one was just intrusive?
Yeah, because it kind of felt like one of those... The music that they used throughout the film was the same like melody, and the melody kind of just reminded me of those videos that people do compilations of like goofy animals doing things.
Is Hans Zimmer, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. But I don't know if it's, if that was his work directly, or if this was like, I don't know. I really have no clue. He is the composer, but I don't know how much, if that was part of the composition.
I don't know. It kind of just doesn't work for me. The tone of it doesn't fit with the tone of the movie for me. I fully understand it does for everyone else, because there's so many fans of this. Yeah. And I like it. I think it's really fun, but I don't take it too seriously. I think that's where I draw the line.
Yeah, I think so. I think that a lot of people that I tend to see like kind of ride or die for this movie take it a lot more seriously than I took it. And I just don't know. I feel like at the same time, like, Quentin obviously didn't... I don't think he was in love with this idea because he sold the screenplay in order to finance Reservoir Dogs.
I think his missing film, My Best Friend's Birthday, is kind of loosely like this. The main character, I think, is the same. And I told you when we started watching, the way that Christian Slater was saying things and talking about things, I was like, Tarantino wrote that as himself. Like, that sounds like Quentin Tarantino coming out of Christian Slater's mouth right now.
Yeah. And I don't know, there's just... I mean, just taking the movie for face value, I thought that it just seemed really silly. You know what I mean?
It's a caper film to me. It doesn't do enough to be a thriller. It's just a drama, a crime drama, about 2 runaway people, a couple in this case. They're all kind of runaway people, all the 3 movies we're talking about.
Yeah, but I don't know. This one felt like the most cringeworthy.
I think maybe it's the romance to you comes off cringeworthy, to other people comes off as why they love the movie. I think the romance is a big part of it.
Yeah,
obviously it's
for
in
sure.
the title.
I mean, yeah, because we do have our main characters played by Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette, and they, I mean... Alabama is our main girl, and she's a 4-day-old call girl. She has not been a call girl for very long, but she was basically hired to have a relationship, or at least a one-night stand with Christian. And I guess they really digged each other.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's a little forced. Like, why is this call girl falling in love with him? But then he starts giving, like, the cool attitude, like he doesn't care that she's a call girl.
Yeah.
So you kind of understand it.
I suppose, but then also, I just feel like, I don't know. Because it kind of paints Clarence as, right at the beginning, like, not necessarily like a loser, but kind of like a loser. Like, he works at a comic.
It's Quentin Tarantino. Yeah. Instead of working at a video store, VHS, he works at a comic book store.
Yeah, he works at a comic book store, and he goes to see movies all the time. And
not only movies, he goes to watch a triple feature and
right.
of kung fu movies and invites girls to them.
He invites, like, anybody, I think. Like, I think he was trying to get his ball. I don't know. But we get the impression that he doesn't get out much besides these little outings, and he doesn't meet a lot of people. So that's why a call girl was hired in the first place. And then all of a sudden, when he meets her, like, something switches inside of him, and he's like a little badass, you know, where he goes to kill her pimp, who's played by Gary Oldman.
Elvis tells him to do it, or, you know, his mentor, I think is what they call it in the movie, but it's like, Elvis.
It's Elvis, played by Val Kilmer.
Elvis is like telling him, like, be cool. You got this.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it is fun, but it's just so silly the more we explain.
Yeah, and I think that's what I don't necessarily like about this, and why I think that there are sometimes I feel a little bit disconnected with Quentin Tarantino's movies, which I will say, like, one of my favorite movies of all time is a Quentin Tarantino movie. So it's not like I'm completely disconnected from his writing and his style, but I do think that the more as we go through his writing works, the more I think that there is a little bit of a disconnect.
I mean, he's obviously very influenced by pop culture.
Yes.
And that's a driving force in basically everything he does. Mm-hmm. And that's why a lot of people hate him. Not him, personally. Maybe they do, but they hate, like, his work because it's too pop culture driven.
Yeah.
And this is not different at all. I mean, there's a lot of name dropping. Sonny Chiba and comic book characters. I'm sure he mentioned some. I already forgot.
Yeah, he does talk about some comic books that kind of go over my head.
Yeah, and then the story itself feels like other things he's directed, like Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs and maybe Jackie Brown.
Yeah, but
because of the briefcase of drugs and the...
I will say that this script very much does have his style of voice. You can tell that it's his writing because of the way that his characters talk, even though it doesn't have those Quentin Tarantino elements like being out of order, you know? Like, it's very linear. There's not any time jumps or there's flashbacks, flash forwards.
There's a long monologue with a lot of N-words.
Yeah.
Which he also did in his early films.
Yeah. He does
so
do that.
I feel like this one out of all of them is the one that feels the most like him.
Yes.
Screenplays wise.
Yeah, screenplay wise, yeah.
This feels like he could have directed it. And I think he would have done a lot of a better job than Tony Scott, but that's maybe because I don't like his movies.
Perhaps. And I don't know, like, it really, and this is kind of nitpicky, but I think that because I didn't like that song that just plays throughout the film, it really took me out every single time it came on, and I just couldn't get immersed, I guess, in the story. But that's not to say that I didn't enjoy my time with the film. I do think that the beginning part drags a little. I'd say like the first 30 to 45 minutes really feels like forever. But after that point, it goes by pretty quickly, I thought.
I don't agree. I don't have a problem with the pacing. I do have a problem with something I'm sure people actually truly like about it, the costume design. I think it's so dated and specific and just weird. Like, even the suits, like the suit that Christopher Walken wears, feels like I'm watching an older movie because of it. Because it's so specific to, like, the 90s.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, of course, like, Patricia Arquette with their pinks and garish colors and blues and the big glasses. It kind of dates it a little.
Sure.
I'm sure people like it because it's so 90s. Mm-hmm. But I didn't watch this in the 90s. I wasn't alive. So I watched it now, and it did leave me a little bit like, oh, this feels old. It looks old because of it. But we watched the 4K Blu-ray, so it looked great.
Yeah.
It's just the costume design I can nitpick at.
Yeah.
Not that it affects the movie, but...
And I don't know. I think I have a hard time sometimes with romances where it's like, this is not like your typical like cheesy romance, where I think that like cheesy lines don't jar me as much. In like a Hallmark movie, in like a Hallmark romance, they say like the wildest things out of left field sometimes, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. This is a Hallmark movie.
I mean, Patricia Arquette does do that, though.
Yeah.
She says wild lines like she's so in love that he killed her pimp and stuff like that.
Yeah, but like that's what I'm saying. Like there are like these little romance lines that completely like just set me on edge. I don't know, because it just like cringes me out, and I think that that's a problem that I have with some romances.
I just think our biggest problem coming in is that we knew the reputation this film had. If we didn't take it as seriously from the beginning, we might have just been like, oh, okay, I see it. I still had a lot of fun. I still gave it a 7 out of 10. It's fun. I'm gonna watch it again. I have no problem with watching it again. I think it's just fun time. I just can't take it super seriously as like a great film.
Right.
But it's a good film for what it is.
I can definitely see why people like it and why is like the quote unquote cult following. But I feel like, to me, the way that I was kind of like expecting stuff to go into, and it may just because it has Christian Slater in it, I was thinking it was going to be more like Heathers, like in terms of tone, not in terms of like content or anything like that, but just kind of the feel that Heathers has, and it doesn't. So that is on me. But I also gave it a 6 out of 10. Because I think it's just kind of okay. I think that, you know, the performances are good. It's just one of those things where I think I just get a little bit annoyed or like cringed out from it, because it, like, there is a lot of stuff that feels cringy, and I'm not sure if it was done with the purpose of being cringy or if it's just like it just happens to be cringy to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a more immature writing style, because this was the youngest he was writing. So it does kind of feel like, oh, this was made by someone younger than me.
Yeah,
and you always look at people younger than you as cringy, especially when you're young.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're looking at early 20s like, ew. But I mean, I like the movie.
It's not bad.
There's nothing terrible about it, that's for sure. And I see its cult status.
Yeah, for sure.
It's visually striking, like the imagery. You can put a lot of those images on posters, and there's a lot of like alternative artwork for it. Because there's just like iconic looks and all that stuff. So it makes sense that this is just cult followed. Yeah.
But now we're going to move on to another romance that Quentin wrote. I feel like he must have been, you know, really in his feels about somebody, I feel. I don't know. It's
about somebody's feet.
Perhaps. But we're going to move on to Natural Born Killers, which is a 1994 movie that was directed by Oliver Stone, and it stars Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis, and then as backup characters or supporting characters, we have Robert Downey Jr., Tommy Lee Jones, Tom Sizemore, like all of these people. And
this, we're well aware that Tarantino doesn't like his name associated with this.
Because he says it's not his vision.
Yeah, but bottom line, he sold the script. They modified it a lot. They made it more political, I think, than what he wanted. Tarantino is the type of person that likes violence to be violence.
Yeah, and no, like, ulterior motive.
And not, like, as a message. Like, violence doesn't need to be a message. There needs to be a purpose to the violence, but it doesn't need to be a political message.
Right.
Oliver Stone tried to make a parody of something political. I mean, that's what Oliver Stone does, right? He's a big name. And he's done a lot of political films, a lot of war films. He did the World Trade Center, which is dreadful.
He's done like JFK and some other
political
stuff. Nixon,
He's done a lot of that. He did also Platoon, which you might know him for more than this. This is kind of out there. It's very out there. I mean, the editing is insane.
Yeah. And the story's
insane.
Crazy. But I will say, because I am going to talk kind of harshly about this movie, I do like it. Despite all of its, I think, many flaws, I do like it. However, I think that this happens a lot with movies that try to make satire, especially when I feel like the person directing it doesn't, he's like out of touch.
I wouldn't say he's a funny man. So
yeah, so it's trying to, I understand that the message is like, it's a critique on the media playing up, right. Exploiting.
It's the 90s. This was made in the 90s, early 90s, or mid 90s, and this is when media was really turning commercial. And
tabloids were a big thing.
So they kind of exploit violence, and this is what it's criticizing, and specifically like, serial killers and the cult behind serial killers.
Yeah, and it has like references and images of like Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, the Menendez boys, like all of these people that do have kind of a following. You know, I think that's kind of weird, but and I think most people think it's kind of weird, but there is a following for him. I think
in the introduction to the movie on the DVD version we have, he mentions how media's gotten worse and not better since he made this movie. And I mean, he shows people being interviewed being like, if I was a serial killer, I'll be those two because they're so cool and hot and all that. Yeah. So, I mean, it's the message is obvious.
The message is obvious. However, I think that a lot of movies that try to do this critique on it while, like, showing you exactly what they're talking about kind of play into it a little bit too much. Like, I think that this is, like, you are the thing that you're criticizing at this point. It's kind of like the same thing with Cuties, where Cuties was that movie that came out that was, the intent was to criticize the sexualization of young girls, making them grow up, the leering that they get from old men when they're like literally 11, while also sexualizing those girls within the film itself.
But that movie does a cardinal sin that this doesn't. Cuties is very fucking boring.
Sure.
As well as, you know, people don't agree with the visuals shown.
Yeah, so I feel like it's the same thing where, like, yeah, it might have been more, this movie is more entertaining, but I think it still falls victim to the same type of critique. Like, it's still, you know, still kind of shows you the same stuff that it's criticizing. It is what it's criticizing. And yeah,
it's still violent media, criticizing violent media. Yeah, I get it, but...
And I think it is, whether or not that the intention was to create copycats of this, it did create copycats.
Of course, the intention was not that.
You know, I know, the intention is not that.
It's created that's debatable, I guess, in a sense. But yeah, it's inspired some criminals to some extent. Which,
it's definitely not the fault of Quentin Tarantino or the person. You can't, like... you know, whatever. But I kind of liken it to the movie Rope by Hitchcock, yes. Where the premise of that movie is we have this professor guy that wrote this book that, like, the elites should rule the world and, you know, kill the, quote unquote, kill the people that aren't smart enough. And he meets two students that, as the movie goes on, he finds out that they have actually killed somebody to prove that they are part of the elite. And he's kind of like, I didn't intend for you guys to take that seriously. Like, this was just like a thought bubble type thing, or a thought process. Like, you weren't supposed to take it seriously. It's kind of like that, you know, where it's like, yeah, nobody intends. I don't think most people intend for their creation to inspire people to do bad things, but it still happens, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and those are the reasons Tarantino doesn't like it. Because he didn't mean to do any of that. He just had, like, a Bonnie and Clyde type movie, but with serial killers instead of bank robbers. And I could see what he would have done with it. I'm not sure this is better or worse, because I think this is pretty well done. I know the editing, especially now, can be controversial, because it's so fast-paced and, like... it, like, just throws so much at you. And in the 90s, this fit in better than now. But I don't know. I like the movie. I like I like the acting. I like
Yeah,
Woody
yeah.
Harrelson a
Well,
lot, and Juliette Lewis is great.
Yeah, and I think that, I know that their age difference in this is crazy, but I do think
It's like
that
12 years.
they do. Well, it's 12 years when she's 18,
And he's
so
30.
and he's 30, so it is like a little bit creepy, but I can't deny that they have really good chemistry together on screen. Like, they really make me believe that they're obsessed with each other.
And this is probably Woody Harrelson's best performance. I mean, he kind of always plays himself. In most movies, he's kind of always a little crazy, a little drunk, a little whatever.
A lot.
Yeah, but he's very good in this.
Yeah,
he sells this character completely. And Juliette Lewis, for a teenager, kills it. She sells me that she's crazy and she's in love and she's doing all these things. And then there's choices that were made that, besides the violence, were also like touchy. Like, she's molested by her father, not on screen.
Yeah, but it's like he keeps mentioning it over.
Yeah, and they show it like a sitcom, like a family sitcom.
Yeah, which I think if you were gonna do it like that, seems like, yeah, that'd be a way to show it.
It's funny to me. I understand why it wouldn't be funny, but I think it's funny. Like it just works. It just feels like someone just going crazy and putting all his ideas on paper and then filming them.
Yeah.
Like, of course, doing it like a sitcom kind of breaks the immersion because it doesn't feel like a real linear story. Mm-hmm. But it's not supposed to be real. They're not supposed to be real serial killers. They're supposed to be mocking the cult following serial killers have.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense that you show them in different TV perspectives.
Yeah. And in different ways, too.
Yeah.
Where, like, they have, like, that montage where they're on magazines and, people are like, people justifying themselves for being supporters of them. Like, I still value human life, but...
It's a very obvious satire, and then the biggest face of the satire is Robert Downey Jr. as the interviewer, trying to get everything out of Woody Harrelson's character.
Yeah. I
don't like Robert Downey Jr. in this, in particular. I think he kind of sucks and takes me out of it.
A little. He's not the best.
I mean, Marvel fans will disagree. You should have 5 Oscars just for his eyes, but...
Well, I meant, like, in this. He's not the best in this.
No.
I think he's fine in other things.
I think he's the worst in this by far. He takes me out completely. Tommy Lee Jones, I think, is great.
Yeah. I don't know. I think he's fine in this, too. You don't really see him, like, that much.
You see him enough. He gets his head cut off.
True.
In a prison riot.
Yeah. But I don't know. It just feels kind of weird watching it a little bit.
I think it has a pacing issue in the middle. Mm-hmm. I think the beginning is really fast and the end is really fast and the middle drags a little. Mm-hmm. When the Robert Downey Jr. character is dominating the screen and we don't get much of either of the couple. But once we get them back together, it's like, okay, here we go. And I like the beginning a lot, which it kind of is similar to the beginning of From Dusk Till Dawn. Mm-hmm. And then I like the ending. I think it's really creepy to just... The idea of, like, they film him doing his own speech before dying, whatever.
Yeah.
And then they just leave the camera rolling and they walk away. Mm-hmm. It's like if you're the one finding that and you just find a corpse and a camera rolling and you watch that footage back, that's so creepy.
Yeah, I mean, it would be creepy. And then they get to live their lives, Like, we have the little thing at the end where they... I think presumably we are to presume that they stopped killing people. Like, that part of their life is over and they're in an RV and they've got 2 kids and she's pregnant with their 3rd and they just get to enjoy life, Which is, I mean, good for our main characters, but at the same time, it is kind of like, oh my god, they killed over 50 people and were the direct... I mean, again, they didn't orchestrate the prison riot, but it was something that...
They caused. Yeah.
That happened because of them.
They also didn't orchestrate their influence in society and this youth that's behind them and wants to be like them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's the side effects that Oliver Stone might have accidentally done in real life with this movie.
Yeah.
I think the problem is when you make a movie like this and it's so badass.
Yeah.
And the killers are, like, legitimately cool. They're cool.
Yeah, they are cool.
So it's like
Woody
I want to be
Harrelson's
cool, too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kill people? I mean, I don't do that connection. I don't feel like anyone listening to this would make that connection in their head.
But, there are people out there that have a certain proclivity towards violence, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. When I watched this and I was younger, I liked it a lot more. And now I gave it a 7 out of 10. It could be an 8. Again, I think it's a good movie.
Yeah.
The editing is like, I don't even know if I like the editing or not. Mm-hmm. But I know it works for the effect needed, so I guess it's good.
I also gave this a 7 out of 10. I think that I did enjoy my time as much as I think that it has its, like, issues in terms of message versus what got received. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But, I mean, sans that, looking beyond that, I still think it was a pretty entertaining movie. It wasn't anything that I thought was jaw-dropping amazing, but I think the performances were good. The editing is a lot, but I don't really mind it all that much. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think it takes me out of it ever. I don't think I was ever taken out of the movie as much as I was with, like, True Romance.
Yeah.
With certain stuff.
My biggest downfall is Robert Downey Jr. and then maybe, obviously the legacy that's left behind. But if you ignore that violence could get out of the screen and affect real people, mm-hmm. just as media on my TV screen, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun violence.
But I also am kind of curious to see, because Quentin Tarantino did publish the script, his original script that he wrote separately a few years, I think, after this movie came out. And I just kind of wonder, I haven't read it. I might, just because I want to see how different his vision was, because I feel like there are some very Quentin Tarantino-isms throughout the film, but I know that he says that it's not his film. Like, it's
he
not
wanted
something,
his name removed.
Yeah,
from it.
Because it's not something that he would have done because they changed it so much. So I am kind of curious how much of it they changed, because to me, I mean, you tell me that Quentin Tarantino wrote that movie, I'd believe it. Mm-hmm. So
I wouldn't. It's too political. I mean, he doesn't really do it. He doesn't do politics like that. I
think that, like, I don't think that he would write in the little montages of real life serial killers. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that would be something he would write in. But I do think,
the whole media spectacle of it. I would think that's the biggest add-on. The Robert Downey Jr. character probably wasn't in the screenplay, but you can read it. You can buy it on Amazon on paperback, I think. And
I mean, I probably will at some point. It probably will be a project just to kind of see, because I'm curious to see what his actual vision would have been like had he had creative freedom, or like, maybe not creative freedom, but if he was in charge of it, because I know he sold it at some point.
Yeah, he sold it because he couldn't get it made. This is something he actually really wanted to make, and he couldn't get it made, so he sold it and moved on with his life, and then, got sued for trying to publish a screenplay and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on to something more light. I don't want to say light, because maybe I'm wrong. There's heavy scenes in this, but
this movie, like, oh my god.
From Dusk Till Dawn. Classic.
I really don't like the first half of it, in all honesty. I think it's a bit much for me.
It's a first half. It's a Robert Rodriguez first half, which he directed it. Him and Tarantino are besties.
Correct. And Robert Rodriguez, he created some of my favorite movies of all time, like the Spy Kids movies.
And Alita Battle Angel.
No, but the Spy Kids for sure. So the first half, it's very, very serious, I would say. It is a drama, or like a crime drama.
It's funny. The Tarantino character is funny. Because he plays a character in this
that's psychotic.
Yeah, he's insane. And he wrote himself to be insane. That's fine. And he commits rape and murder and
a lot of awful things.
He's implied to be, to some extent, pedophilic.
Yeah.
So, Obviously very flawed, but he wrote him for himself, so he knows what he's doing with this. I think it works. I guess. Especially because it's him, so he looks kind of creepy already. Mm. So you put those little greasy glasses on him and make him George Clooney's brother, so he looks even uglier.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, of course. He's handsome in his own way.
Right.
But yeah, it's two brothers. They're serial killers, criminals. I guess they're not serial killers, even though they kill in serial fashion.
They're just criminals.
They're bank robbery.
They're, professional criminals. And I think that, I don't know, the first part of the movie really, like, sets up this tone of, like, just kind of despair, like, George Clooney's character doesn't really, like, he'll basically do anything to get his goal accomplished, even if that means killing people. He's not going to kill somebody just for funsies.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily want to, but the way that his brother does.
Yes, but he will do it if necessary. So at the beginning, they have a hostage, and George Clooney's character is kind of like, if you do everything we say, we'll let you go. If you do jeopardize my goal in any way, I will kill you. But Quentin's character is definitely more like, I'll just kill you because I want to. Or like the voices in my head make it seem like you wanted me to kill you. Or you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they end up meeting this family, Harvey Keitel, Jacob in the movie, and his two kids, Juliette Lewis, who we saw in Natural Born Killers.
She somehow looks younger 2 years after.
Yeah.
And Harvey Keitel is fantastic. I mean, George Clooney is also really good. Mm-hmm. I think between those two, one of them would have to take the cake for the best performance in this, but they're both really good. Mm-hmm. Tarantino himself works for his creepy little character, but he gets dispatched halfway through.
Yeah. But they meet this family. It's a pastor that has lost his faith and his two kids. And the two brothers kidnap that entire family, and they force them to go to Mexico to get them over the border. And this is where this movie takes a giant turn. So if you are interested in seeing it and you haven't seen it, I would tune out, because oh my god, I was not expecting this turn at all.
I left you in the dark for years because I hadn't seen this in years.
Right.
And I knew the next time I saw it, I was going to show it to you, so I left you in the dark, and you were not expecting the turn it took.
No. That was crazy. They are all vampires, at this bar, and they have to, basically Night of the Living Dead, or,
It's hilarious. It's fun. It turns into, like, a 70s exploitation film. Yeah. Right out of Mexico. Straight up. Like, it just feels like an ode to all those fun vampire horror movies with no real stakes.
It really turns into a comedy. I get that it was like kind of a comedy at the beginning after seeing the second half, but at the same time I still don't really like it all that much. But maybe upon a second watch, knowing what I know, maybe it'll be better. I did really enjoy it. You get to meet Salma Hayek's character, Santanico Pandemonium. Loved that for her. She had to shove her entire foot into Quentin Tarantino's mouth. So
I would assume he repeated a lot of that take.
Yeah, so...
Also, this movie has two exploitation stars from back in the day. Tom Savini as a Sex Machine, and Fred Williamson as Frost. And they're both pretty freaking badass. And they're really cool. And they're just to be cool. Yeah. And they do it. And that's what matters.
No, it's kind of funny. Oh, and we see, like, Danny Trejo, which has been in several...
Yeah, he's also looking real young and real slim.
Yeah, he was in the, the Spy Kids movies, which were also directed by, oh my god,
Robert Rodriguez. Also, there's Cheech from Cheech and Chong. Mm-hmm. He plays multiple characters, I think.
Robert Rodriguez, like, I really don't understand him as a person, because I have seen so many of his movies as a kid without knowing who he was, because obviously I didn't know who the director of Spy Kids was. I didn't know who the director of Shark Boy and Lava Girl was, but it was this guy. And like, I just really don't understand how you can make From Dusk Till Dawn, and then in the mid 2000s you make all these kids movies. He confuses me. He like really confuses me.
He's just having fun out there. What else do you want from him? He's having fun.
And he uses this is the funny thing. So he directed Machete, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, which is in the same
universe as the Spy Kids movies, because that's their uncle. Like, Machete is their uncle. Like,
yeah,
what? Yeah. This is so in the same canon of Machete, you have this Spy Kids world where freaking George Clooney is the president, and Antonio Banderas is a spy that has kids.
Yeah, anyway. It's his own universe. It's very specific.
Literally, and it's just crazy to me.
And Dusk Till Dawn is crazy too. And the turn is just, it doesn't make the movie better, but it definitely makes it more fun.
Yeah,
it's
for
just
sure.
Balls off the wall, crazy shooting, different monsters. There's monster transformations that you're just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like, one of them turns into, like, kind of a dog creature after he gets his head shot off.
Yeah. Like, he grows, like, a new...
Yeah, he grows, like, a head out of his torso, and it's like a dog. It's really fun and weird, and they're just having fun, and that's all I want from this.
See, I feel like this movie is kind of, like, to me, the least, like, a Tarantino movie. Just because
the horror. I mean, he doesn't do horror.
Sure, he doesn't do horror, but then at the same time, he also doesn't do, like, blatant comedy, which it does turn into. Like, there's a whole scene where Frost is telling them this story about how when he was in Vietnam, like, the horrors that he suffered, and, like, meanwhile, Sex Machine is turning into a vampire because he got bit or he's trying to conceal it. Like, what? I don't know. It's so funny. And
I think it's funny that Fred Williamson Frost wasn't the original Inglourious Bastards. And then Tarantino made Inglourious Bastards. There's just so many connections. Just so many people working with other people that they love and that they admire.
Yeah.
Because Robert Rodriguez and Tarantino were watching old Fred Williamson movies and like, we need that motherfucker in our movie because he's so badass. And that's what they got.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so weird. And there's like, he makes some references to other places, such as one of the characters, one of the kids has a Precinct 13 on the t-shirt, and I was like, oh, that's like an assault on Precinct 13.
Sure, yeah.
And
let's just mention movies we love. Why not?
Yeah.
It's such a fun movie, and I get the beginning is heavier.
It is heavier. It kind of makes me sad. Like, the beginning, like, really, like, genuinely makes me, like, sad.
I like it. I like the first half. I think it works. And it makes the twist work even better, because then you're not sad if Tarantino dies, because he's a scumbag. But you are worried Harvey Keitel, in specific for me, will die. Because you really don't want him to die.
No, because he's, like, a good guy. He was just there to, like, travel with his kids after his wife died. Like, it is kind of upsetting because the only people that survive this massacre are Seth, aka George Clooney, and Kate, aka Juliette Lewis.
Which I don't understand why her character is doing what she's doing at the end, when she wants to join George Clooney, but maybe she's traumatized.
Well, because I think it was meant to be like, oh, do you want to like have a romantic relationship now? And he's like, oh, I'm a scumbag, but I'm not like a dirtbag or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this has a lot of sequels, and I think a TV show, which haven't seen, probably won't. Yeah, maybe the sequels, but
I don't know. I feel like it's not like direct sequels. I think that it has like different. It focuses on different.
Yeah, it's
people.
a different location. But the end of this movie kind of makes you like, because it's like you realize that it's on top of a pyramid or something like that.
It's on top of like an old Aztec building.
So it's kind of like
temple. I don't know.
And it goes like a lot of levels deep. So it kind of implies that there's a lot more to it.
Yeah. That the titty twister is not the only thing.
And I don't know. I don't know if they'll be this fun. I've seen the reviews for the sequels and they're really bad. the reviews are really negative. So I don't know. Maybe after I watch this again, I'm like, this is so much fun. I need more of it. But I'm satisfied with what we get.
Yeah, and I feel like if I watch it again, I may enjoy the first half better. I just feel like the tone that it sets at the beginning is depressing to me, and I was like, ugh. It's one of those things where it's like I don't like who these people are as people, you know? And I don't necessarily mean that they have to be good guys, you know? Where it's like, I didn't mind Natural Born Killers, their characters. They're obviously very bad people, but I didn't mind being with them the entirety of the movie. I just felt like if I had to sit here and watch, you know, Quentin Tarantino be the person that he is, and George Clooney kind of like cleaning up after his messes, making excuses, not doing anything to stop these horrific tragedies, like that was going to be a very upsetting movie to me. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I was just waiting for you to see the twist.
Yeah.
I was just like looking at you. Like, it's gonna happen soon.
That was crazy, and I did enjoy it. I think I gave this a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I gave it a 7 as well. I gave it a 7 on all of them.
Yeah. Unoriginal.
Yeah.
But, you know, 7 out of 10. I definitely, like, I can see this having more of a cult following than, like, True Romance. You know?
Different crowds.
Yeah, it is different crowds.
This is for the exploitation crowd. The other one is for maybe the girlies that like crime dramas, but they need a little bit of a cute romance.
Well, I think Christian Slater really helps that. I don't get it because I don't really see the appeal of Christian Slater. But I know a lot of people, not personally, but just, you know, on TikTok or on Tumblr or whatever back in the day, that were like obsessed with Christian Slater. Like they loved him.
Yeah, I'm not in love with him either. I don't watch movies because he's in them.
Yeah.
I don't watch movies because anybody's in them really, except Charles Bronson, and
right.
That's it.
But yeah, I think that, you know, overall, like our final thoughts on Quentin Tarantino as a writer instead of as a director.
I think perspective-wise, you gotta understand this was very early in his career. Mm-hmm. And this was something he made, like these scripts were something he made that were above his budget at the time. Especially like the ones he did before Reservoir Dogs. He couldn't afford to make those.
Yeah.
So it's different. It's different when you're not doing your own script.
Yeah, because you can have a vision. Writers have a vision, I think, all the time of how they picture the movie going.
Yeah, there's plenty of writers that hate the movie or hate choices that were made or hate because then the studios are also involved.
Yeah.
And sometimes you write a character a certain way, the studios just can't have that because it's going to be a disaster for them.
Yeah.
And
I think
it just happens a lot.
It's the same with like book adaptations. You know, like Stephen King he's not only written books, he has written scripts for some of these movies / TV shows that have been based on his work, and sometimes he likes them, sometimes he doesn't, you know?
Yeah, the critically acclaimed Shining, he hates. The TV adaptation he loves. Mm-hmm. So it's sometimes it's not the script or the story it's based on. Sometimes it's everything else that goes into it. Actors, producer, studio pressure that make you choose certain actors, make you make certain choices. There's a lot more behind stuff than just the names we see. Yeah.
And I think that, you know, I am kind of interested to see if he will, after he makes his final movie, if it is truly his final movie, or
the movie critic has it's been labeled.
Which who knows? Maybe it'll change. Maybe
we'll get bored.
Yeah, who knows?
Or maybe not. Maybe we'll get writing books. I'll buy them, or I'll get them at the library at least.
Yeah, and I think I don't know.
I read Cinema Speculation. It was fun.
Yeah, and I've read part of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's like book adaptation, because it's not a script; it is like an actual book adaptation.
It's a novel. That one's a novel. That one's his first book. Yeah, it's a novel of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and then Cinema Speculation is an autobiographical / movie review book.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are certain things.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, they're interesting. I don't know. Sometimes it is kind of like I think being in Quentin's mind can get a lot sometimes. Like, I think that these movies Well, I think that Natural Born Killers and True Romance have more of those cringy lines, and I kind of am wondering if it's because he's like a younger guy writing these things, and they're just a little cringy. You know what I mean? Mm. And I think that might be why. It's because he's young and he hasn't had like a lot of life experience. Like, he has had more life experience, I think, you know, in the same amount of time that I have.
Right. I mean,
but it's still kind of like cringy and uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's elements that are immature, not in a bad way, just in the this is a you know way.
Yeah.
You can't do more. You're not 80. You're not going to write like an 80-year-old.
Yeah.
But I think like you're in your 20s or your 30s.
Yeah.
You know.
It will be interesting to see if he writes more scripts after he's finished with directing. And, you know, I feel like, yeah, he wants to do more writing, but if he writes scripts, I kind of feel like he would still have that. I don't want people to not do what I have in mind, you
Especially
know?
after the experience he had with
Yeah.
truly hating Natural Born Killers.
Yeah, so who knows? Maybe he won't write scripts. I don't know.
But you can write a review for this podcast on Apple Podcasts, and I think Spotify does that too now. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Including a 5-star rating, of course.
Right.
And yeah, we'll see you for our next episode.